visa till the next day for Vietnam, and I also overstayed my welcome in Cambodia for 2 days. So I was essentially an illegal immigrant and couldn't get into Vietnam until the next day. So I had to stay at the border till the next day. And I know it's funny to say that like I was an illegal immigrant in Cambodia, but it's actually not as bad as it sounds. Like I just had to pay them like $10 Canadian. That was it. Um, but just that moment was a bit scary because of the border guards were creepy and not very nice, and that's a different thing I can get into later. Is just like that whole experience of men while traveling, but for now, yeah. So that whole situation was difficult and stressful, but made it through, no problem. Then the next country would be the Philippines, and what happened there was I missed my flight from Vancouver to the Philippines. I missed the flight. A bunch of things went wrong there. I made a whole episode on that and all the breakthroughs that happened through that experience. So, like I said, this is all, I mean, it's all neutral. I don't even like for me it's all great. It's amazing. But I feel like all events are just kind of neutral, and I can choose how I look at them. But I look at them all like miracles because all of these have taught me something. But I really want to unlearn the expectation that because I'm arriving to a new country, that means something's going to go wrong. Because I don't want to think that, because that's what I keep getting is these really bad experiences. And yeah, so hopefully, so for the next country, which is New Zealand, I'm going to break the cycle of really bad things happening. Um, but so that's like the small 5% that I'm talking about. And then the rest, all the stuff I talked about before with all the amazing things, like that's the 90%. So don't let any of this scare you because, like I said, this is the most impactful, I'd say, or some of the most impactful things is when these things are going wrong. Because when you're able to self-reflect on it and take full responsibility for everything, it grows you a lot, because it's grown me a lot, because I know that, and I've been able to really see how my poor planning and just my rackets, like I talked about rackets a few times recently, like just the things that are holding me back from my fullest potential, things that aren't negatives, but they're things about myself that I'd like to work on. And you really get to see these while you're traveling solo. So I've got to see mine clear as day, and they have screwed me over immensely. And I get to just look at it and say, wow, okay, that was my fault, and I'm going to learn from that. And some things you think I would learn but still haven't learned, or it's like I think I learned it, but yet I make another mistake that's just like that. But that's just all part of the process, right? So let's move on. Yeah, my poor planning has been definitely a hardship for me traveling. So whatever it is for you, that main thing that kind of is maybe your bad habit, or just that thing about you that you're like, that is holding you back in life, is probably going to show up for you in traveling, and it'll probably screw you over as well. But I think what better way to learn from that than to really have it really screw you over so that you really learn from it. I don't know, that's just my experience. um so yeah, the whole getting scared for my life thing I've definitely been afraid for my life a few times. I thought at a few different points I would get kidnapped in a few different countries. I felt like this. Actually, I think every country I've had that at least one time. I've felt to different extents, but I've been in fight or flight mode at least once. And I don't want to scare you away, but that is possible, and it definitely doesn't hinder my experience at all. It just honestly adds to it because it's part of the experience, and it's like it really is part of the experience. I've had yeah, like I said about the border guards, when they were denying me into the country into Vietnam, they were also asking me out to go out with them, go for dinner, and talking about me in their language and being creepy. And then I've also hopped on the back of plenty random motorbikes, which is not necessarily the best idea, but it's never been a problem. I've always had luckily good people, but it could at any point be anybody. So I kind of stopped doing that. Like when I would get off the bus, I would just like, people are always yelling at you, come like get onto my tuk-tuk or my motorcycle or something, and I would just kind of hop on one of them and say, okay, take me here. But and so I was never worried in those moments, because I don't know, I guess I'm a little too trusting sometimes. But the time in Cambodia, the guy that was driving me across the border, he was, I don't know, that was my first time feeling like when he was talking about me, that I could tell he was talking about me to the guards and to just different people. And at some point I was like, they could be arranging to sell me and I would not know. So that was the first time I thought that. I'm like, that's really sketchy. But obviously, like, I was like, so I was kind of like, okay, I really hope that this guy actually drives me to where I'm gonna stay. But I think and I've experienced worse ones than that. Like, I've definitely had my intuition come up really strong in the Philippines not too long ago, with a group of like Filipino men that were kind of following me down from, we were all coming from the same place, but just like I could just tell the energy was, it was weird, and I had a weird feeling about it, and I kind of, and then I ended up hopping into a tricycle, like a tuk-tuk tricycle thing, which is like at the bottom of the hill that we were at, and they wait there for people, and I kind of like hopped in right away and left, because I felt like these people, like they were from the docks, and I'm like, I felt like they wanted something from me, and it was really weird. And I hop in the tuk-tuk, and then I realize, well, if they really did want to kidnap me, these guys, this would be exactly what they would want, is for me to get into this tuk-tuk. And then, like, they know the driver. Like, so I thought about this, and I'm already in it driving. And I was like, oh. And then he took a wrong turn. Like, he didn't take the turn to where I was going. And then immediately I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to die. And I asked him, I said, okay, can you turn around? You're going the wrong way. And then I said, do you happen to know those guys that were with me up there? And he said yes. And then I was like, okay, I was like, I didn't say I was gonna die, but in my mind I just immediately started praying to God. Like, the whole ride home I was praying, please don't let me die right now. This is like, I genuinely thought that was, or at least that they were going to rob me or something. Like, I felt like, yeah, so I think that was probably the most time that I felt unsafe. Other than that, I've been flashed in Vietnam. A guy flashed me, and and then I had to like kind of run away, and luckily I had a motorbike, so I just like skirted out of there really fast. But then I was just like, I thought that someone was also following me from that point, because there was a bunch of them drinking, and so that part was kind of scary. So yeah, every country I've had this thing, these things happen, and it's inevitable, unfortunately. But it's been I'd say only a couple of times. Like, these few times that I'm mentioning to you are kind of the only times, I would say. Other than that, just, yeah, you get a lot of attention from men in the Philippines, I'd say, is far more than the other countries. Like, I found the other countries, it was more like, just way different. In the Philippines, they're very, very expressive with like how they feel. I find that's my experience of Filipinos. So like, the Filipino men they're really likely to just, like, you're just walking by and they'll just say, I love you, or you're so beautiful, or oh, like, or just like say things to you, or just, and you meet someone and they immediately ask you, how old are you? Do you have a boyfriend? Like, everyone always wants to, like, so you get a lot of attention, and it's like very normal in their culture to ask these questions and to kind of act that way. But it can be a little bit strange when you're arriving, especially if it's like your first country that you're arriving to, going from home where you I mean, no matter how beautiful you are at home in the Western world, like, you still have no idea what it's like having this much attention. Like, it's out here, it's completely unrealistic the way that I'm treated as a white woman is super unrealistic. Like, my friend Gemma and I would talk about this many times. Like, when we go back to or if we ever go back to our homes, we're gonna feel completely invisible because our egos are just shot through the roof out here because of all the attention we get from not even just like the men, but from everybody, I guess. From everybody. They put us on a pedestal. So it is kind of alarming at first. And I had it was a negative for me at first. Like, when I arrived in the Philippines and I experienced that, I didn't like it and I was getting annoyed. Had a lot of people asking me to take pictures with me, and just, especially when it was like, it wasn't always men, it was kind of everybody was like just really excited to have me, of course. So it was definitely it's usually with really good intentions. Excuse me. But I think that, but I didn't fully know what was going on. Like, it was super new to me. And so when it was a man that was asking me for these photos, I'm like, well, I just felt like, no, like, leave me alone. I don't want to talk to you. And like, I'm busy working, I'm painting, like, leave me alone. And I made an episode about this a long time ago about this, when this was the case, because I changed my context really just in a split second. In that moment that I was getting really annoyed with all the photos, I thought in my head, well, this is good practice for when I'm famous. Which I know sounds like a really big egotistical thing to say, but I always say this, like, when I'm rich and famous, like, and for me, like, when going into this type of work that I'm wanting to do, I know that I'm seeing myself as a public figure. That's what this vision of my life has become. So I'm not really afraid to say it. Like, I do see myself becoming rich and famous. and it's funny because it's starting to actually happen in the Philippines. Like, people are starting to recognize me for my videos and stuff, just like my painting stuff. But it's kind of hilarious because, okay, I have to sidebar on this because this is actually insane. This story that I'm telling you right now, the context shift of when I was annoyed with all of the attention, and then I changed it to saying, oh, but this is getting me prepared for when I'm famous. Well, at that time that I had made the time that I had that thought, I had about 500 followers on Instagram. It was stuck there for a year or something, like at 500 followers, okay? And now I'm at like 50,000, and this is 4 months later. And I'm like 50,000 on Instagram, and then like another 50,000 on TikTok. Like, it's kind of crazy how but the Instagram one is the one that grew. Like, that went from 500 to 50,000 in 4 months of my reels going kind of viral in the Philippines. So it's like all my followers are Filipino. And but just the funny thing about this is, like, I feel like I completely manifested this because I just used that feeling of being, literally, I felt like I was famous there in Mindoro when I arrived, and I used it into my advantage of, like, okay, well, I'm famous. And then that vibration like led me to becoming like, I'm not famous, but, like, getting more recognition and stuff online. So it's really hilarious. So I had to sidebar on that because it's just too cool how that happened. But I just need to warn the people, all of you, men and women, you're gonna get a lot of attention as a foreigner. unless you're Asian, then you can pass as Filipino and they won't give you as much attention. But yeah, so it's just something you need to be aware of, and just go with the flow and enjoy it. Like, just try to find the joy in it, and just enjoy having people love you, because it's nice. It's nice to be loved by everybody, right? So just look at that side of it rather than it being too overwhelming sometimes. I think also something to warn the women about, it is hard to haggle. Like,